Well, we used to hang out with a group of mates on Halloween, and we used to get the best Poundland horror movies that we could find from Poundland, and they were unbelievable. So I'm going to
For
tell
it
you,
to be a real horror, it has to leave you with something afterwards, I think.
not many serial killers and murderers have motive, right? Jeffrey Dahmer didn't have motive. He didn't hate this person with a vendetta from childhood. They were just people in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So, the only body part you ever see of this guy is his eye.
Cool, so a week late, but happy Halloween. How did you spend your Halloween?
Happy Halloween indeed. Well, the actual day of, I was at work, but considering some of the horror things you see in gyms anyway, you could say that was well spent. I was actually at the weekend at my mate's wedding, which was a goth-themed, spooky-themed wedding, because he is goth, and it just so happens to be on the weekend of Halloween as well.
And you went dressed as The Only Way is Essex?
I went dressed as how us down here would spend Halloween. So black leather trousers, black shoes, black leather jacket, but a leopard print shirt. That's as gothic as I can get. That's just all I can do. And I was the brightest dressed there out of everyone. Everyone looked amazing, but everyone was in black or dark purple or dark red. And
you've got this mask that you didn't wear?
I've got this mask because what they wanted was Halloween themed, but not fancy dress.
Okay.
So there's a few steampunk hats, but no masks. No masks. I mean, I carry this one around with me most times anyway.
It's just Friday night, right? This is mine. It's coming off though.
I'm not entirely sure what this is meant to be.
For everybody that got the silence there, that's me taking off the mask. For people who want to know what mask it was, go and check out YouTube, like and subscribe. But I just couldn't continue with it. I think Essex outfits are quite scary anyway.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But then I've seen some sites in Liverpool and Newcastle too. But obviously in Essex, it's very, very shiny. The light hits it at the right direction, could blind you. Terrifying.
Yeah. So the whole topic of this episode is again, it's a week late, and as you said on our little pre-recording, that there is a parallel universe in the Matrix somewhere where it's still Halloween. So this will go out somewhere to a kind of like Nightmare Before Christmas sort of Halloween episode, right? So for me, my Halloween was way more childish, and I went to Disneyland.
Did they do it up like Halloween though?
Did they ever? Like, I've been at Christmas for the last 2 years, and they made a bigger deal of Halloween than Christmas.
That's so cool.
Like, there was like villain shows on, and like loads of people dressed as all the villains. There was like Cruella de Vil shows. It was quality.
That's up straight. That is. I'm gonna have to go at Halloween.
Yeah,
I've been at Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, we bought the priority ticket so we can now also do Christmas and compare. But people get so into it, and here as well, like this politeness that we have as British people, right? Where if we're going out with the kids to Disneyland, we'll wear an outfit, but it'll be something quite tame, right? This Disneyland was selling blood bag slushies. There were girls in fancy dress that I swear the skirts didn't cover the bum cheeks. There were all sorts of leather, like what I expected, like at your goth party or one of your sex parties, like that sort of outfit was commonplace at Disneyland. It felt a bit strange.
That's the thing about it, right? It becomes like you think Disney, you think way back until like the early 90s when the adverts for Euro Disney first came out, and it's family. The adverts would never show a couple or someone on their own. Or a hen party, or a group of male or female mates, but you go there and you see all that, which is a little bit weird when you think about it. But now, what's it going to become? It's going to become Instagram / club fetish / people going to get their photo in their crazy slutty outfit in front of the castle or a character or something like that. Which is going to kill it. Which is really going to kill it.
So pulling back the curtain a little bit, like we were talking before we came on air about my upcoming wedding next year, because I gave Rob his save the date. So obviously, we very much love to have you there. And if my best men take me to Disneyland for my stag do, I will ask them to do it again. Alex, Nick, if you're watching this, please don't take me. I love Disneyland, but that is not where I want to go. No. And I don't think I have it. When I first spoke about, I said to I've got two best men, and one of them is pretty much birth to university years, like my oldest childhood friend. Like, he's the reliable one. He's the guy that I will give the ring to. He's the guy that will help organize proceedings. He's the guy that make sure everyone is sitting in the right place. And then I've got Alex, who's from university onwards. And he's the person who probably makes sure that I get arrested and don't make it to my wedding. Like, he's stag do guy, right? And I don't think he'll do it now because he's a bit more sensible and he's now engaged himself. But when we first talked about it years ago about what my stag do would be, the idea of doing it over a week and having it based around the 7 deadly sins was brought up. Which I think is quite ingenious.
Risky. I mean, that is genius. But then you also got to think. I know it's very relative to the topic we're talking about today, but obviously a film was made about those 7 deadly sins. You could end up doing all sorts of stuff, bruv. All sorts.
Yeah. I think it's quite like, I always think sometimes these things that sound like they're easy if you're like a bit of a dick and just want to cheat on your future wife. That's an easy thing to do. But you didn't go to university, did you?
No.
So you've never been to a carnage event?
No.
Do you know the concept?
A little bit.
So for people who listen to this who aren't in the UK, Carnage is a university night out. And it's sort of like a white T-shirt party. So you'll have all the bars that you're going to go to on the front of your T-shirt that you'll tick off as you go on your shirt. And on the back, you have challenges that are representative of the fancy dress that you're wearing, the theme for that day. So let's say if you were a superhero, it might be hug a Wonder Woman, kiss a Superman, and just like silly things. Some of them are a bit like sexual in nature and some of them aren't. There's always kiss 5 stewards on there, and this is how they got people to work the events without paying them, because they just hired the horny young men and women who just wanted some snogs. And I found those events way more enjoyable when I was taken than when I was in a relationship, because you have to think outside the box. Like, how do I kiss a Wonder Woman without cheating on my partner? So I found my male mate who was dressed as Wonder Woman and gave him a peck. But like those things I think are interesting. And like with the 7 deadly sins, like how do you do them all? Like gluttony, you could just go to a massive good buffet meal.
Hell yeah.
You know, sloth, day watching movies.
Lust is the easy one, really, for a stag.
Yes, you go to a strip club, right?
Strip club. Yeah.
Strip club for lust. Then you know, gluttony would be sort of like going out and eating a bunch of food at a brunch. Sloth would be sitting and watching good movies with your mates and a few beers, potentially some weed. And so that's what else we got? Is it envy? Envy, pride.
Envy, pride, gluttony, sloth, lust, malice.
Malice.
Nah. Let's have a super quick Google.
Yeah, super quick Google. Googling on the air. That was always super professional, isn't it? This is why Rogan has somebody else to do this, right? What are the 7 deadly sins?
Here we go.
You got them.
Got them. So we've got pride.
Yeah.
That's the worst one. Greed. Wrath.
Yeah, I got it.
Wrath, depending where you're from. Envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth.
So we've worked out sloth. We've done lust. We've done gluttony. Greed would be gambling, wouldn't it? You go to a casino.
That's a good shout.
Wrath? What's your wrath? Like axe throwing?
White collar
or boxing? Yeah, go to white collar boxing. Envy?
That's the tricky one, really, isn't it?
I would. Do you know what I would do? I would have a day where we go and look at houses we can't afford, like pretend we're really rich, dress up in suits, and we just go and see like the most fancy flats in London and try and pass off that we're really rich. And I'll be jealous of every person that can buy one of these flats. Rent an Aston Martin for the day and realise that I can't actually drive out of that.
Yeah, there you go.
And then pride. I mean, if you time it with a gay pride, just go to pride.
Well, you're in August, didn't you? So close.
Well, but this is 7 deadly. This is stag do. So you'll be looking what it could be like June, July time for maybe even May for the stag.
Yeah.
So we could probably be June by the time I come back. So like
Pride month now as well, isn't it? It's not even a Pride day or a Pride week. It's Pride month. So you've got
I went to Pride once and I didn't realise the T-shirt I was wearing. It was a Family Guy T-shirt. It says, "Now this calls for a sexy party." I was like, I wonder why I was getting so much attention. Great event though. Great event. I tell you what, there isn't a party like going to a gay pride event.
There's nothing like
generally fucking crack. Birmingham in particular. Birmingham was cracking good.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
No.
There's a massive Hurst Street, I think it's called, where there's loads and loads of gay bars, and they're all open till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because homosexual people party harder than us. Right, that is an absolute fact. That's why they all open till 5 a.m. and our bar shut at 2. They can go harder and longer than we are. So cracking nights out. They absolutely destroy me and hangovers for weeks, but great fun. So going back to the topic at hand, looking at Halloween. I mean, what is the Halloween? Are you a big Halloween person? What's the traditions you've had with Halloween in the past?
So we never had many traditions. When I was of trick or treating age, we didn't really go out because I'm 90% certain. Well, obviously, we're going back years now. I'm 90% certain one of the guys across the road was a registered, nonce. Nonce. So
you don't trick or treat to the house. He'd always go for the treat, wouldn't he?
It's going to treat. It's dark. When I really think about it, this is quite dark. So I don't want to make too many jokes. But he was either my town's, biggest offender, or he was just a lovely old guy that's misunderstood. I don't know. But yeah, we didn't do much of that because the area I was in wasn't great. But I would always, once I was of the age to sneak my old man's horror films on VHS out of the back of the cupboard, around this time where it's all getting dark and the sky's changing and there's this weird energy in the air, that's when I first really started getting into it. So that became the tradition for me.
So hold on, before you go into that.
Yeah.
You weren't looking for horror movies when you went into the back of your dad's cupboard. Like, you saw a box of VHS in the back of the cupboard and you immediately thought horror?
I wasn't looking for horrors, but all I ever found was horrors. It's quite disappointing. All I ever found. Yeah.
He's a respectful guy, stand-up guy, your dad.
Standing Christian, apparently.
Yeah.
But I was always drawn to, like you say with Disneyland, I was always drawn to the darker films, the villains more than anything else. That's the sort of stuff.
Much more fun to be a bad guy, isn't it?
Massively so. And I think it's like imagery like that that in the 90s drew me towards like Metal Axe, things like that. And that was it. So it's when horror's done right, 100% one of my favourite genres in the world. I like dark things. I like reading dark stories. There's a weird dark edge going on in here, which I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it's just the conglomeration of all those things building on top of each other,
I think it's a fascinating thing, though. I have this theory about serial killer documentaries on Netflix, right? I think we probably spoke about this before. I think the people that are more fascinated by those documentaries are the people who are less likely to be the ones committing those acts. So you're fascinated because it feels, I certainly think so, that it feels so alien. I can't comprehend the mind of someone that would do something so terrible, so it's interesting to me. Whereas if your mind can kind of go there, it's not that interesting. My thoughts. And I think horror movies fall into that same thing. It's going into a world of something which we don't understand, which makes it in turn quite fascinating. Like I said before as well, I think some of the most interesting and subtle directors come from horror movie directors. Like if you said to me, Simon, what's your favorite genre of film? I probably wouldn't pick horror. But as we said before we came on air, if you want to watch a YouTube video about a top 10 things behind the scenes in horror movies or things about making horror movies, I would choose horror every time. I don't care about the back stage of like 21 Jump Street, but I do about the interesting things about Stanley Kubrick and how he made The Shining, and I find those things particularly interesting. Going into I was a huge Halloween person growing up, huge. And I've been trick-or-treating in 2 countries. I've done it in England and I've done it in Scotland. And they are totally different experiences.
Really?
Yeah, we are the English are way too nice. So trick or treating in England is a very entitled thing. You dress up your kids, you go around, it's basically give us sweets, please, and they go yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Scottish people don't give anything away for free unless you earn it. So in Scotland, it's called guising, and you dress up and you don't get any candy, you don't get any sweets and chocolate until you prove yourself to them. So you have to sing or do poetry or just do something like a dancing monkey to get your stuff.
No way.
Because earn it. There's no entitlement in Scotland. It's a hard-working country, especially in Forfar. I had to learn poems. I had a dinosaur poem book, and I had to learn it. And I went dressed as a vampire, and I went and spoke about dinosaurs to every house in the neighbourhood.
I've literally never heard of this. That's amazing. I want to do that.
I don't know, if it was necessarily like everyone does that, or they still do that, but maybe it was just my grandparents being like tough as nails. I mean, my granddad, when my mum was growing up, once, this is not for Halloween, but you put, she comes downstairs and he goes, I've made you breakfast. It was just cornflakes. But my mum was suspicious. She was like, well, my dad never makes me cornflakes. Never makes me breakfast at all. She puts the spoon in, and it was like gravel and coal, and then a layer of cornflakes on the top. Like, talk about sort of like middle-class, hard-working family. Although my granddad did quite well for himself. But like, there was nothing handed to you in that household at all.
Love it. That's so
cool. But then when I moved to the UK, we used to have our neighbours around to do Halloween parties. We did the Bobbing for Apples. We did Pin the Nose on the Witch, which ended up being... I never understood why my parents started cracking up, but when you're, a kid and you're probably only about 4 foot and you've got a big, 6 foot witch on the door and you're closing your eyes just going straight forward, where that nose ends up is very dodgy looking.
Yeah.
And then watching whatever we could that wasn't terrible things to show young children. Like, what was the most scary thing you remember watching on television growing up before you were the age to truly watch horror movies?
See, this is a tough one because my kids who live down the road, who were in my older brother's year, that I used to babysit us a little bit, would just put, this is how I ended up watching Die Hard at the age of 8 and things like that. Stupid stuff, which has probably screwed me up a little bit. But obviously we had, I forget what they were called. We had like odds. It was Erie, Indiana. There was Round the Twist. There was Are You Afraid of the Dark? All these little, kiddie shows that every now and then would have something that was actually quite creepy that might play with you a little bit. But I can't remember any specific episodes. Obviously, that's so long ago. Absolutely so long ago.
I remember those very well. It was Goosebumps on BBC, and there was Are You Afraid of the Dark on CITV, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The scariest thing about Are You Afraid of the Dark was the opening credits. Remember that swinging, and then that creepy bridge. And we had a bridge that looked like that over the brook in our town, and I hated going over it in the dark because of that TV show.
If you remember, I want to say it was called Nightmare, which essentially was like the first metaverse. The guys put on the helmet and they're walking through a computer-generated dungeon, castle, whatever, and they'll bump into people and they all have their little task. But the person with the helmet can't see where they're going. So their school friends are directing them. I want to say it was called Nightmare. I don't think it was. But it was terrible. But it was great because every now and then you'd hear like a troll was coming after you or something like that. So you'd hear these giant steps, like really, really loud. But obviously it's like a 1980s computer screen. You can't see nothing. But like the school kids are screaming at them, run, no, go left, go right. And you're like, at home, you're watching this, like feeling the panic with them, going, oh my God. But
I think I remember that.
But no episode ever terrified me because it was terrible. I want to say it's called.
I didn't. Not many TV shows scared me. Having said that, once Goosebumps scared me. Many did. Most of them weren't that scary. Some of them were downright silly. But I remember. Do you ever watch the one with the mask? She's getting bullied, and then she goes to this mask shop, and they have these proper scary looking masks that come right around your face, and it gets stuck on her head, and then the mask float around and torment her.
That rings a bell.
That was scary.
I don't know if you'll see. Yeah, it was called Nightmare K. And they put the helmet on, but they can't see where they're going. So it's all computer generated, even though they're just walking in a room.
For audio listeners, there's a kid with literally like a VR headset walking down a purple thing and with empty doors. That if you were on that show, that was scary.
Because you can't see where you're going. You can't see nothing. The helmet's covered, and all you've got is your mates directing you where to go, and they're panicking and having their own conversation. Mate, but then after that, and not long after that, obviously X-Files came out, and then that was it. I think X-Files episodes terrified me on TV more than anything else. Some of them were pretty dark.
Michael Jackson Thriller video scared me as a kid, and it wasn't the zombies; it was the yellow eyes at the end and the laugh. Like that got me. And as a kid, I cried. And then as we grew up, we kept doing these parties. My mate, who I had started them with, his little brother obviously was coming because it was two families, and he got scared and cried at Michael Jackson Thriller, which made me feel better that it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that haunted me as a kid, and it wasn't a kid show, but it was my parents were really into murder mysteries, And did you ever watch Midsummer Murders?
Oh, yeah.
That theme music is mortifying. And the first episode I watched is where there was this vicar that was killing people. And that scared me. As well as a Jonathan Creek episode where they couldn't find out where the killer was, but he bricked himself in behind the wall.
I remember that. Yeah, Jonathan Creek was creepy.
Had its moments, right? And because I was scared by quite, other than Morse, I was scared by quite a lot of these murder mysteries. So I didn't watch many of them, but because I was into magic, I started watching Jonathan Creek and then realizing this isn't a magic show, this is a murder mystery show, and a lot of them scared the life out of me as a child.
God, that had some dark stuff behind it. That one. Let's go back.
Before going into what we consider our list of our favorite horror movies and why, tell me a little bit about the couple of the worst horror movies you've seen and why.
God, jeez, I should have prepared.
Because, by the way, to premise this question, I had a few years at university that I had a tradition. Well, we used to hang out with a group of mates on Halloween, and we used to get the best Poundland horror movies that we could find from Poundland, and they were unbelievable. So I'm going to tell you about two of those, but I'll let shall I go first? Give you time to think.
Go for it. Give me a second to think. Yeah, go for it.
So the first one, and this is the next one, is the real one that was hilarious. It was one called Jigsaw, right? And the DVD cover looked proper scary, right? It looked like this crazy half skeleton, evil red eye thing. I was like, this would be good. I'm going to get this. And the first scene summed up the rest of the movie. So they're in this school, American school, and there's like an art class. I think it's like a university. And the teacher hands them all a different body part from a mannequin, like a plain mannequin, right? So someone gets an arm, someone gets a leg. And their school project was to decorate this mannequin with their deepest, darkest secrets. Because that's a good, responsible school. And if that didn't set the tone enough, someone puts their hand up in this very busy class. Like, they could have just hired less extras. But someone put their hand up and goes, what about the kids that don't get a body part? And the teacher replies, well, you automatically get A's. Like, great, right? There's a lot of thought in this. And so then he takes them to a dive bar, right? And he gets them drunk whilst they tell their stories. And all of these kids have had trauma. Like, their parents sexually abused them. They were beaten up as a child. They got mugged. Their brother got murdered. Like, none of them was like, I lost my bicycle once. They were all mortifying stories. Like, where did you find all these kids with real trauma? But you get him drunk. He tries to hit on all his students. And then they put this mannequin together, and this mannequin obviously comes to life and kills them all.
Right.
But the picture on the front looked scary. What this thing looked like, really, was a mixture of Action Man and Johnny Rotten. And it was comical. The acting was woeful.
Man, there would have been so many of those that have escaped my memory, like the creep shows, all sorts of stuff. So, like, there was normally a big selection of scarecrow-themed DVDs. You could pull out a Blockbuster, but man, God, that would take me all day to go back and think about those. But I've got a couple in my head.
Okay, give me first one.
A couple of obscure ones, and one very, very popular that I just think is terrible. But I will go with probably the most bored I've ever been in a horror film. It's from the 70s. It's called Deathbed.
Okay.
And it's exactly what it says. Exactly what it says on the tin. It's a bed that has become conscious and starts killing people.
Oh,
so when I read this as a kid, pulling the DVD out, going, okay, this could be good because A, it's a bed. That means there's going to be couples having sex in it. That means I'll see some, 70s horror boobs. That'll be good. Wasn't any. And I was kind of intrigued. Like, what is this going to be like? Is this going to be a full-on gore carnage fest? Is it envelopes them and blood flies everywhere? Because I was really into my gore as a kid. No, it's the bed has developed its own stomach. So you're lying on bed asleep, and you would slowly dissipate into the bed. You'd then fall into this chamber, which was stomach acid, essentially, and eventually you'd dissolve. But there was never any, like, the people are lying in the beds, and obviously the music starts playing, but there was never really anything to be scared of because it was all so slow. And then they're in this acid, and nothing's happening because they're asleep. So you're just watching plastic mannequin dissolve in acid. And there was never any. I can't even remember how it ended. Whether they destroyed it or what, I can't remember. It was that bad. It was the most bored I've ever been in a horror film. That one always sticks out.
Yeah, this is what's great about horror movies, right? Because I don't think there's another film genre where there's such a wide depth of quality, and there's so many that fall into the it's so bad it's good, to the point where I've actually got a third that I will do, but I will go to what was my original number one, because you will have heard of the one I've just thought of, and I think that would be quite funny if you hit your thoughts on. But this one was called Cheerleader Massacre, right? And so we went for like a Halloween movie night with my mates, and everyone said we bought horror movies. And then she opened up a DVD collection and she had no horror movies. So she's like, "Oh, should we just watch this just comedy?" I'm like, "What are you doing? You invited us around for Halloween." So me and my mate got in his car, went back home, and we raided his brother's cupboards to find out what movies he had. So we saw Cheerleader Massacre, and we just came back, and we refused to let them put anything else on. But we can watch 21 Jump Street. No, we're watching Cheerleader Massacre. Like, we literally were chanting it. So there was this typical slash movie in the woods, very low budget, very terrible acting. To sum this up, there's one scene I vividly remember. So the girls go out, they're into the woods, and they hear this thing, this person chasing them. So they're running through the woods, and they get chased, and this person's catching on them, and they find this big house, like big scary house, like normally where bad things happen. They run into this house, the door is open, they lock the door, and they're checking all the windows, like, where is this guy? And then he sort of calmed down. They think, oh, he must have gone. He goes, well, just check the upstairs. And then all of a sudden, one girl from the upstairs shouts down to all the other girls. And this, you should go and watch this movie because you would have seen your 1970s horror movies. Yeah. They went, girls, check out the bathtub. And there was this massive circular bathtub, which you all just decided to jump in. And then literally, if that's not weird enough, at one point, one of the girls turns to the side of the bath and goes, oh, look, chocolate sauce. And they start covering each other in chocolate sauce. Why? I don't know.
It sounded pretty good so far.
It was bad because the acting was bad, but I have watched it every week ever since.
It's that scene in particular.
Yeah, exactly. That scene on repeat. It's the only bit worth watching. What's your second one that you had in mind there?
So I'm going to go with one that there are people out there will say is their absolute favourite horror film ever. For me, Paranormal Activity is junk.
Yes.
It's absolute junk.
I agree with you.
Scared watching CCTV footage. Why on earth? For me, this then sparked this era of nothing but jump scares because you're so limited with what you can do. It's CCTV. How can you really create an atmosphere, a scary atmosphere or tension through grainy CCTV footage? I remember watching that in the cinema, feeling like I've been robbed. I could have logged on to, like, there were back in the day. I'm sure you can still get on them. There were sites where you could log on to most CCTV cameras around the world. Now, if you just chose one around the back of a club in Liverpool, you can see some horror sites that were a little bit more scary than this Paranormal Activity. But when anyone told me how much they loved it, it was the scariest thing they've ever seen, I was like, God, it's like you haven't even watched proper horror.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Jump, loud bang, throw something at the screen, done. I'm like,
I thought the last jump scare in it, and I won't spoil if anyone hasn't seen it, was pretty good. But you're waiting an hour and a half for that.
Yeah.
And I found, like, there was this thing with a lot of horror movies and you'll get this vibe from the majority of my top 5 list, which is actually a top 7 list, but that most of them were made before I was born for a reason. Because you have this ability to build tension and suspense, and a lot of them aren't jump scare related. I'm not against a jump scare, but I feel we went to a phase where through bad writing, I had things like the Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project, which spawned this off. And I'm not a big fan of Blair Witch either. When nothing really happens, like, a twig snapped. Like, great, I go into the woods, I hear a twig snap all the time. It's not that scary. And so either nothing happens for this place of jump scares, or they completely overdo it. Have you ever seen either of the Amityville horror movies?
Well, both. Well, technically, I think they did 1 or 2 of the originals. I want to say there was more than one, but obviously there's a Ryan Reynolds one as well.
That's the one I was talking about as the bad one, because like the real story, if anyone doesn't know about the Amityville horror story, this family, I think it was 21 days. They came to this house and were seeing creepy things, and they left within 21 days of them being in there. The husband went a little bit mad and got a little bit more aggressive. The girl started having an imaginary friend. There was a room that had a swarm of flies, and all this stuff. And like, it's creepy. And the first movie encapsulates it really well. This building suspense, there's someone just not right about this house. And they found a secret red room in the basement. All of that was kind of true. And he obviously added little bits on top of it to make it more exciting than it was. But you could see why they would go, oh, I mean, we'll get the guys to come in and sort the flies. Well, okay, don't worry, your imaginary friend isn't real, blah, 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 blah. But in the modern Ryan Reynolds one, in the first day, she's doing her hair, she looks up at the mirror, and there's someone, a ghost hanging behind her. If I saw someone commit suicide in my house and then disappear, I wouldn't have lasted one day. Like, I left that movie just thinking, how dumb are you?
Yeah.
So you either get nothing or you get way over the top for the sake of jump and gore, and actually there's no real story there. It's just jump scares for the sake of jump scares.
Yeah, that's it. There's no. I think if there's depending on the movie, if there's an overabundance of CGI and jump scares, then the story's never that good. And for it to be a real horror, it has to leave you with something afterwards. I think there has to be decent story. There has to be tension. There has to be the thriller element to it as well. It can't just be throw this at the screen and someone hits a cymbal in the background. It's just cheap and easy.
My top two of my list of good horror movies, both of them are quite understated. And the bits that I find quite scary in them are actually not actually the bits that most people find scary in them. And that gives you, when we get to them, you'll see an insight into what I think makes a good horror movie. And it's not jump scares and it's not gore. Those things can be useful, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
So my last bad horror movie, and I think you might have seen it. I'm going to go out on a limb and think you might have seen it because I got a feeling this is a movie you would see.
I wonder.
And I'm not doing this to throw any judgment, but I've got this movie that I bet if you heard this movie existed, you'd see it out just because it's so bad it's good. And it is so bad it's good. Have you seen the movie Teeth?
That is terrible.
When you talked about the acid, I couldn't think of anything else.
That goddamn film is, the acting's horrendous. The premise is obviously ridiculous. There's nothing enjoyable about that film at all. But
I beg to differ. I think there's a lot enjoyable about this film, but not because any of it's good. I mean, I hate the fact that she ended up sleeping with her creepy ancestral brother just to get back at him for being creepy. That's very weird. I don't like the fact that she started embracing her weird. For people who haven't seen this movie, a woman ends up getting teeth in her vagina that eats the penises of people that are evil, right? Yeah. Essentially, right? And everyone end up being evil. She finally found someone that she likes, and she actually, she had sex without any issues, and then immediately becomes a dickhead. I'm like, my God, they just couldn't help themselves, could they? But the thing I found totally hilarious about this movie, and I found it makes it almost worth watching, is how does everybody know about the legend of the killer vagina? So, she's talking to people. She goes, I've got this thing. Like an embarrassing story, right? I've got this, thing in my body, Yeah, I've got this. He goes, what is it? What is it? Is it a lump? Is it a boil? Is it a mole? No, I've got some teeth in my vagina. And then they go, oh, yes, the Wingardium Leviosa Palabra Benazo, like the Latin word. I know I just gave a Harry Potter spell. But you just get this Latin, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. So I'm like, what? Why have you heard of that? And then the doctor when he got his hand bitten off, it was like, oh, my God, the legends are true. The killer vagina. That was the line. What is this movie?
Oh, my God, that film. The people who made it should never work in the movie industry again.
I think it's comically good. I think it's so bad it's good. I just think
that's the thing. It's one of those things where you get mates around together, you have a couple of drinks, you take the piss out of it, you laugh the whole way through, but it's advertised as a serious horror. That's the problem. Put it in the comedy genre. Put it in the comedy section of the store. You're laughing. You've got that accurate.
So what do you look for in a good horror movie, and why is horror one of your favourite movie genres?
Because it's the most intriguing one for me. It plays with emotions more than any other movie genre does at all. Everyone's on the edge of their seat. Some people can't physically look at the screen during some horror films. Tell me another area of your life where you physically look away from something when technically it's not even in the room. It's pixels on a screen. That's the weirdest thing about it all. But I think that it plays with this dark element that we've all kind of got inside us. And some people enjoy it and like embracing that dark element a little bit more. Some people just do not want to face it, which I'm sure you can go down some Jungian philosophy route about why this is the case. I might have a look at that later. I swear I read something one day, Jordan Peterson talking about horrors, but like it's like a 2-sentence thing or something like that. But it has this ability to really hook you in to the film like nothing else can, like no other type of film can. So if you get a good horror, it's because the storytelling's good, not because the monster or the killer is made up to be really good, or the jump scares are, completely out of the blue and really get you. It's got from start to finish. It's got to be good. And it's got to be a good build up and a good ending. So many go cheap on the ending. Like that was the problem I had with the Conjurings. I'm like, there's some really good stuff in here. There's some good stories. There's some decent jump scares, and it's not all reliant on jump scares. There's tension, but then the endings, I'm like, it's turning into an action film almost now. I don't want that.
This the M. Night Shyamalan cop-outs, right? Like The Village. That was obviously panned. Like, The Sixth Sense was good, but so many of these, I like that. But I agree with you. They do become cheap action movies, a lot of them, don't they? When you have to kill the villain, it becomes almost like a Terminator movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah, it turns into a quest.
Before we get on to the top, I know I'm building this top 5 up, but I think that's the main thing we want to talk about in the episode, right? Is the top 5 horror movies. But I don't want to glance over that Halloween is also very big for fancy dress. And I think the art of Halloween fancy dress is, and I'm a big, this is where my money went. I was a huge fancy dress person at university. I go all out. I do it properly. And I feel that certainly in Hong Kong, I don't know how it is now in the UK, but I hate Halloween fancy dress now. Not for me, but I feel that no one does it properly. Last year, I went to a Halloween party, and we went as the Adams family. I wasn't too keen about doing that outfit, but it was one we could do as a group with a few like my fiance and another couple. And we went to this Halloween outfit, and the closest thing we got to an actual scary outfit was Squid Game. We had people dressed as bars of soap. We had people dressed as spacemen, astronauts, aliens, kinda. We had people from Tekken, people from Mortal Kombat, people just like dressed as anime characters. I'm like, it's not just random dress up day, and that's what it's now become. Is that still the case? Is that happening in the UK? Is it just Hong Kong?
I like how militant you are about this. But
hate it.
Maybe
the hill I'll die on.
If we go back to last week's New World Order episode, maybe that's another rule you could implement. Halloween fancy dress is scary only. But I get it. It defeats the purpose. It's not. Otherwise, it is just another fancy dress party or event or whatever. Like that was the whole point. It was always you would dress up as ghosts, vampires, monsters, zombies, scary aliens, that sort of stuff. If you went back to the 80s, okay, maybe there were a handful of slutty-ish ones to go with it. But then now it just seems to be that more than anything else.
Slutty can be done. You just have to think. You have to be smart with it, right? There's plenty of ways you can be slutty and scary. But I tell you what, if I was single, I would much prefer going with the chick that's gone out and done Halloween properly than just worn a short skirt and become a schoolgirl for the day.
Yeah,
like at least try and scare it up a little bit.
That's what they're doing anyway. Like the girls who are wearing the absolute slightest fancy dress costumes are the ones that are dressing like that on a Saturday night anyway, It's just routine.
What's the best Halloween fancy dress you've ever done?
For me, it was for a gig. It was I'm certain it was a Halloween gig. We had two. I had one where I went all out with the makeup, did like the standard white face, black lines everywhere, got it looking pretty damn good. And I had a faux hawk at the time, which was looking pretty sweet. And I was like, this is cool. I finally figured out how to really, really do this. This is going to look amazing. But I noticed everyone started doing that, the white and black face paint and the extra teeth, things like that. So I wanted to do something that I knew no one else would do. And so I bodge jobbed it out of several different items. And what I ended up going as, it's not scary in the slightest, so it defeats the rule. I had a Mexican wrestler mask and I had half a Buzz Lightyear costume. So I was Mexican Buzz Lightyear. and we're walking around town, like we've set up for this gig, and we've got to get into costume anyway. And I'm walking around the town, dressed like it looks fucking ridiculous, dressed as a Mexican wrestler, Buzz Lightyear. And then a couple of weeks later, we were posting the videos online of us playing. We had people we've never even met commenting, going, "Oh my God, I saw you walking around the town." And I was like, that's it. That's how you get noticed. That means I did something no one's ever seen before. And your brain just automatically caught me walking down the street in the dark. I was proud of that one.
This is my theory of fancy dress in general, right? I think there's two ways of going to a fancy dress party. You either go all out, so you look as either as silly or as awesome as possible, or you don't do it at all. And the reason why is if you don't do it at all, you can go, I didn't know, right? If you go all out, you may look a little bit silly and you may get a few people laughing at you, but everyone wants to hang find it easier to chat to girls or find it easier to make friends, everyone wants to speak to the guy that's like dressed in drag or dressed in something because they're like, that person's going to be fun because he doesn't take himself too seriously. The person though, and everyone does this that doesn't like fancy dress, they'll put on like a hat and some ears and go, yeah, I've done it. And like that person, subconsciously or consciously, people go, that person I don't want to speak to. That person's boring because he knew it was a fancy dress event and he half-assed it. So he half-ass everything else in his life. So I think you doing that is different. People go, fuck, I'm going to remember that guy. I bet he's fun. And that's why here we go.
So my mate was dressed in a clown costume. And he actually looked kind of creepy. Can't see all of it, but it was really big, puffy, like huge Buzz Lightyear thing. Yeah, man. On
the clown thing, before I go on to my fancy dress, because this is something I didn't realise existed, and it seems to have a massive cult following in the horror verse, and I didn't know anything about it. Have you heard of Art the Clown from the Terrifier movies?
Oh, I've only just seen these popping up. I'd never heard of it.
People vomited in the cinema and walked out and cried and all sorts of things. Like, I never believed those things, but if you look at this clown, it looks creepier than Pennywise.
The little bit I've seen, that whoever that actor is has nailed that creepy clown look. That looks really cool. Really cool. I have a feeling that part of the vomiting in the cinema, I haven't seen the film. I do want to. I think it's more of a pure slasher film.
Yes.
And people haven't seen those for a long time, if ever. So you might have kids, late teenagers of the TikTok generation that have never seen full-on knife, gore, blood everywhere. It's probably that more than it being a really, really scary film. I imagine we'd watch it and laugh more than anything.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. I think as well with that kind of thing, it's going to be. I reckon that would turn into an action movie ending. Like, because it's not. It doesn't seem like it's a great story. It's like they're just trying to outshock the previous movie.
I think so. I've only seen 2 tiny little scenes on an Instagram reel. One looked actually quite creepy, this actor, and the other one was just pure, over-the-top, funny gore. Yeah. But again, if that's what you've watched for most of your life, you become easily desensitized to that. If there's just an element of realism to it and you've never seen that sort of stuff, that could do you. That could 100% do you.
Yeah, exactly. They're too mollycoddled, aren't they? Like, I'm trying to find, because you found a picture. I have 3, because I've done a lot of fancy dress, right? But I think the 3 ones I did for Halloween that were good. A couple of years ago, I did Pennywise, but I'm not going to put that on my number 1 because I bought the full outfit, the mask and the works. Cool. So while it looked epic, and I totally pulled it off, like I didn't speak to anyone when they said hello. Like I just tilted my head and looked slightly creepy. And I did old school traditional clown. I did meet someone called George, and I just did respond, "Hey, Georgie," and that was the only thing I said to anyone other than my mates. But I said that one wasn't my favourite because it was no challenge to it. I just sort of bought the outfit and stuck it on. I did Michael Jackson Thriller because obviously, as I said, that's a big link to my childhood. So I bought the outfit, but what do I do with my face? So I tried to get some liquid latex and try and make zombify me up, and I got some yellow contact lenses. Which, by the way, that goes back to one of the scariest things that happened to me because of a fancy dress. I wore it that night, and then I decided to just wear the lenses for another night out. Just normal outfit, shirt, jeans, like smart. But what I wanted to try and do was to randomly scare women. I was single at the time. I was like, I wanted to kind of chat women up, not really pay attention. They look in my eyes and see the yellow and get totally freaked out. Mm-hmm. So I got back. I got back from my night out, and I was only 1 lens left in. I was like, oh, one must have fallen out. So the next few days, the eye that it fell out, I was like, oh my God, it's really sore. What's going on? Really itchy. A week later, that lens fell out of my eye. Like during the night out, it rolled to the back of my head.
Jesus. Oh, that terrifies me more than anything.
Yeah. So this, if people can see it, this is the liquid latex attempt that I did. It did. Well, the liquid latex didn't go very well. It looked like I had psoriasis, more than I looked like Michael Jackson Thriller. But my favourite, if I can find it, Halloween one I went out properly and did A Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah.
So I got the romper boots from a mate of mine. I found someone that owned a proper cup. So that was the attempt. For people who are watching the audio, that's my. If you want to see the pictures of our fancy dresses, go to YouTube, Simon Kingsley Dutton. Please like and subscribe and share it to your friends. But I also drank White Russians all night.
Oh man!
So I had to do it, and I said "Vid well" at any moment I could. So let's go on to our horror movies. I'm going to make my backdrop, if I can, if it wants to work, blood red. As we do it, again, if you want to see the blood red backdrop, go to Simon Kingsley on YouTube, like and subscribe. I'm more plugs than ever. Let's have an amount of plugs I can do in the episode. So let's start. What is the first one you're going to put forward in your favourite horror movie list?
So the first one I'm going to put forward is the very first Texas Chainsaw, a pure classic. And for me, it started this weird obsession with Leatherface. Now, granted, there have been some absolutely terrible Halloween movies, Texas Chainsaw movies, but there have been some amazing ones as well, if you allow it to be. But that first one is nothing but pure, dark, terrifying horror, a bit of gore in there, crazy, weird characters that you've never really seen in any sort of horror before, that are almost based on people in real life as well. The beautiful thing about it was, after watching it, you're like, I'm never going to Texas then. I'm never going out in the middle of nowhere on my own, because there must be people like this. It really planted that question in your mind going, do people like this exist? It wasn't just a character. It was an entire family. Oh my God, it was just incredible. No need for jump scares. Yeah. No need for an action movie ending. No CGI. That's how
what made you say they're good if you let it be?
So some of them, going into them with no expectation, and without ranking them against the original. So the first one's phenomenal. Second one is terrible. Third one is like a comedy film with is it Viggo Mortensen? Lord of the Rings in? He's in the third one. If you want to see a really young Viggo Mortensen, if I'm pronouncing his name right, watch the third Texas Chainsaw. But you won't enjoy it. It's terrible. There was a fourth where it went really weird. It was like futuristic. Like Leatherface had ended up in the future. It was that bad. I can't remember a single thing about it. I raised it from my memory. But then they made two around about the early 2000s, if not the mid 2000s. And what they did was, rather than try and recreate the film, they focused more on the origins of Leatherface, which I thought was really well done and really, really clever. And then they did a second movie, which went even further, like a prequel of the prequel. And I thought it was just really, really good exploration of one of the greatest horror characters to have ever existed. But if you go in there going, right, well, let's see what this Texas Chainsaw is like compared to the original, you're not going to beat that original. No way. No.
These prequels still take a lot from Ed Gein? Because it's definitely, because Ed Gein, for people who don't know the story, Ed Gein we suppose he was a serial killer, but I think he only killed 2 people on record, right? But he was also a grave robber. And people never suspected him for years because he was just this little friendly, quiet hermit old man and just lived in this house. And when the police went in, they found like lamps made of skin and like human heads and body parts getting cooked for food and all this sort of stuff. And he's inspired Psycho, he's inspired Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, he's inspired Leatherface, he's inspired a ton, but probably inspired more horror movies than any other person in history. And I do think that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably the closest. I don't think because it's not about Ed Gein, but it's the one that's taken the most accurate representation of some of that stuff. But I actually had this, and this is good for me choosing more than 5. This is my second favourite horror movie of all time. And as I said earlier on about my number 2, I said my top 2, and you'll understand my thought on horror. Similar to what you said, it almost felt real. And what I thought was really interesting about it is they didn't use very much music. There wasn't very much music. There wasn't much, like, you didn't feel like there was a band in the background. There was a production crew. The only thing that took you out of it was the horrendous acting from the kid in the wheelchair, which is awful, by the way.
That's horrendous.
But one of the creepiest moments in that, there's 2 moments I find really creepy. The first one is the guy, the hitchhiker, the young lad in the family.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really do. He cuts his own hand, cuts the hand of the guy, which is creepy. Yeah. But it's totally believable that stuff could happen. You pick up a weird dude, he's a bit weird, you get him out, and you think nothing of it. And I'm like, that almost is really realistic. And the scene is almost a bit slow. Nothing really happens for a long time. It's just, this guy's a bit weird. And you just sit there in this little bit of, it's uncomfortable. It almost feels like bad filmmaking. Like, there should be a cut, there should be an edit. And the fact that there isn't. And I'm like, I feel as awkward as the characters would have felt. And I think that's a really interesting way of doing it. Yes. And the second bit was when they've got the girl, tied her up, and got her in that chair with the hands on the arms of the chair. And what I love about that is, like, there's very little gore in this movie. Very little. The main bit is that when that guy gets that first, one of 2 jump scares in the movie where the first guy gets hit with the mallet. But what I love about it, they tie her up, and she just sits and watches this weird family have dinner. And you see it from her point of view. They're not doing anything at that point. They're just having dinner. And they're a bit weird. Yeah. And that, like, the fact that nothing's really happening. And, like, look, today, they people edit so much that it just goes to the good stuff. You watch a very mundane but weird dinner party. Yeah. And that is really creepy.
That's one of the best scenes. Like, and everyone automatically goes to the granddad, starts waking up when you think he's dead the entire time. But it's the beautiful thing about it is it does then conjure up this image of that's just their day-to-day life. This is what they do. We think of these monsters that will just hide in the dark and go into a coffin and not come out until someone's there. They're doing stuff every single day, like anyone else would. They're sitting down having a meal together like a normal family, because to them that's their normal, which is terrifying.
And when they do try and kill him, they said they let the granddad do it, right? And I think this is interesting as well, because in nowadays they'd want to make this granddad like the elder statesman of the family, and he would be good. He'd be all of a sudden get out of his chair and he'd hit her. Whereas the fact that he's so old and he can't hold the hammer, and it just goes on of him just dropping it, and then he's like the Leatherface is grabbing the hand, trying to do it for him, and it just goes on and on and on, and no character isn't without its flaws. And that's what's interesting. You haven't got this killer that's this be-all and end-all, super fast, super powerful, all-encompassing character. Leatherface, when the dad comes back, is a scared child. He's whimpering. He's worried that he's lost one of the guys. He's just this kid that's not grown up in this weird world, can barely speak. And that's interesting, because it's like, actually, there's more to this. Like, the dad's the real villain in this. Yeah. Or the granddad, probably, but we don't even get to know how they've ended up the way they are because of the granddad. Yeah. And people like that probably exist, because it's sorry to cut you off there, but the setting is beautiful, because it's like an old house in the woods. Those people could easily get away with murder. They might not even think it's that bad. And that's the thing. It's not a murder in the middle of Manhattan. It's not American Psycho, which almost made my list. Yeah. But so go. Sorry, what were you saying?
I think it's also one of the first. Now, I may be overthinking this here, but I think it's also one of the first horror films that really the characters. It blurs a line of pure horror and mental illness, because there's obviously inbreeding going on in that family. There's obviously intense isolation, but yet they're still doing a normal. Like, you don't see, okay, maybe in Bram Stoker's you do, but you don't see Dracula sitting down for dinner. You don't see Frankenstein changing the tyres on the car or anything like that. You don't see any other horror character doing these mundane things that they would normally do in their routine, but they just also have zero empathy. There's communication issues. One of them can't speak. None of them stop and question, should we be doing this? there's just pure impulse, and a lot of that comes from being stunted as a child, not getting that development that everyone else gets.
Like they would if these people existed in real life, and I felt that super interesting. I do think, why on earth was everyone so determined to come into the house? Like Ellie was like saying, why are you even knocking on the door? And I said, I kind of get it. Like, you don't have mobile phones. If you need gas, you've just got to be more risky and ballsy in the 70s, right?
You do.
But when he opened the door and he was like looked around and he saw the taxidermy on the walls, why did you keep going in?
That's number one. Number one rule is taxidermy. Get the fuck out.
Yes, absolutely. And the girl that falls over when she's trying to get away, and she sits there and screams on the floor for about 10 minutes. Get out.
God.
The one thing I always think of this as well, right? You know, like, again, spoiler warning. We've done enough of them anyway, but particular spoiler warning. You know when she gets away at the end? So she goes away. The truck comes in, and he stops and lets her in. Few things I don't like about this. One, why does he get out the truck? Like he doesn't get in and drive off. They both get out the truck and run away. That's very strange. And then the second guy comes, the hitchhiker, and he sees that, and she jumps in the back of the car and they drive off. Does she leave the truck driver there?
Yeah.
Just leaves him there to die.
You see, yeah, and he was a big guy as well. If you remember, he's struggling. Yeah. Leatherface would have caught him.
Yeah, like. What a horrible woman!
Yeah. I've always had questions about that ending. Always felt for that guy because he struggles. Which that should be a warning sign to everyone. If you want to survive any sort of horror situation at all, don't be the big one. Don't be the fat guy. Got to get away. Speed is of the essence. Get through smaller gaps. Yeah, man.
Isn't it weird that it's the horror movie rules, isn't it? Don't say I'll be right back. Don't have sex. That's always the one. Don't go upstairs. They all go upstairs, though, right? They all think, what am I going to do? I'm going to go up, so I'm trapped. And upstairs, morons. And then you often get like, what it used to be, the black guy always dies first. But now, the white guy dies first because, 2022. One of the mad ones, I used to love a movie. This is not my top 5, by the way. I'm going to get onto my top 5. It's called Urban Legends. Have you seen it?
That rings a bell. I think I did.
There's 2 of them. The first one is actually quite good of a slasher movie. So one of the first horror slasher movies like that, like in the Scream genre of slashers. There was a female serial killer. But what I really liked about it is they were all based around urban legend. I thought that was quite interesting. How she was knocking people off. But the second one, there was literally this woman who she looks out the window and she sees a light go on in the clock tower in a town. So the first thing you do when you see a light going in the clock tower across town is like, I'm going to go and have a look and check this out. Why? Why do you do that? I assume there's someone there working late at night. I don't have to look at it. She goes in, right? A body falls from the top and lands at her feet. Right? So she runs up the stairs towards this thing, of course. And then she gets to the top. She hides. She finds her friend there. She hides in this little sort of shed thing, like a worker's shed. The killer comes in, grabs her friend, pulls her out. She's like, oh my God, gets out. The door finally opens. She looks up, and this person is hanging, like hung from a noose from one of the clock tower things. So she screams for 5 minutes, runs around the body in circles, and then leaves. And she survives. And I'm like, she absolutely shouldn't have any right to survive. Absolutely none.
God, you got to wonder, what would you actually do in that situation? But the screaming, sure, because I've been to these horror parks and stuff like that, and people scream. Normal reaction, but I also think some of the time is put on a lot. But I don't think I've ever seen anyone so frozen in terror that they can't just fucking move. Come on. Yeah. You know the way you came in, you can get the hell out.
I mean, the scary movie, the original scary movies does it best, right? Where she's got like the gun, the knife, the grenade, and the banana. She grabs the banana, then goes towards death, rather than safety.
That film is genius. It's pure genius.
And I'll just give a quick shout out, because again, I mean, actually, I won't give this message because just in case this movie is in your top 5, I don't think it is. But if it isn't, I'll bring it up at the end.
Mm.
My number 5, and this is a toss-up between 2, and I'll explain for a reason, but it's my 2 favourite slasher movies, and I cannot pick them apart. Halloween or the original Friday the 13th.
Oh, mate.
I think Halloween.
Classics.
Yeah, I think
One's
Halloween.
One's in my top 5. One's
Yeah,
not.
okay. Interesting. So I'm going to guess. I'll go through why I think they are, and I'm going to try and guess which one's in your top 5. So the original Halloween, I love the Michael Myers character, not Austin Powers. I love the Michael Myers character because it's just this white face. Before it was William Shatner, and which ruins it. But it's just a white black face. It's not overdone. It's just very, very good. And this looming presence. It's just the amount of times in the background of shots that you have to be looking for it to spot it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so clever. But I do you know what? I think Friday the 13th might tip it for me out of those two. Because I think I like the fact that you look at it from the in-person, first-person view of the killer. So you actually get to be the eyes of it. And as I said, people who like this genre often are fascinated because you don't understand what it's like to be like that person. So it's even more scary when you are seeing it as if you are doing it. And I think that is really interesting. And I like the twist at the end of who it was.
Oh, yeah. Genius twist at the end. And then another twist on top of that is brilliant.
Yeah, that jump scare is unbelievable.
Cool. That's one of the best in history.
Is almost one of the best in history, and I'll go on to that one of my top 5. Is Halloween the one that's on your list?
Of course. Halloween's the one for me.
Why so?
Funnily enough, the 2 adult horror films I ever saw were Halloween and Friday the 13th. Halloween I saw around the corner at brother's mate's house. Friday the 13th was in my old man's collection. Both instantly stuck with me. Both terrified me as well. For me, Halloween's the one because, God, there's so much good about it. Instantly recognizable and chilling theme music. It's the
best theme music. It's the
100%.
best theme music.
100%.
It's better than The Exorcist.
Yeah, massively so. Massively.
But it's not better than Tubular Bells. If you take Tubular Bells as an entire piece of music, a whole 30-minute piece of music, right? It's one of the greatest, most talented musical numbers in history. But if you just take the scary bit, Halloween is better.
Yeah. That's very Alan Partridge, how you just came up with Tubular Bells.
My dad had the album.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that brings back memories, Jesus. But Halloween, again, the first scene is straight into dark, chilling, slasher, boobs. And then it's this slow build-up where it's not too slow. There's these little creepy elements, like you say, he's there. He's in the background. It's like a blink and you miss it type thing. Is he there? Why is he going there? What does he actually want to do? This mask is just, iconic. And then towards the end, it just builds and builds and builds. And, oh, my God, there's so much to love about it. For me, it's would I put that as top? Let me get my 5. I probably would. I'd probably top that over Texas, actually. Yeah. Really thinking about it. It's iconic as a horror film. Absolutely iconic. Everything about it is great. You never see the killer's face. Never hear him talk. You never know anything about it. Great ending.
Great backstory, too.
Great backstory.
And generally interesting. I like learning about the character and the time he spends in the mental institution and why. And I haven't watched the new ones, and I do want to watch the new ones. But the series went a bit mad in the middle.
Yeah.
When you had who was the rapper that all of a sudden learned ninja skills in the Halloween? Was it Resurrection, or where they all have to go with the TV show and they spend the night in the Halloween house? I think it was LL Cool J. I think it was LL Cool J, right? And he knew ninja skills. I'm like, this has gone off the deep end.
So I think that I watched them all anyway. Of course I did, because you have to.
Me too.
There were none of these sequels were great. However, when you get to Rob Zombie's remake, they're pretty damn good. Because
I haven't seen those.
Rob Zombie does dark very, very well. And he does a really good, gritty version of it that stays true to the original, but allows him to add some of his fun as well. It's a really, really good version. And again, goes nicely into the backstory, a little bit deeper Mike Myers as a kid, pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So as I kind of went last, but also happened to be your number one. Do you want to go next, or shall I? I think it's your turn.
I'm going to throw a curveball in because most people forget that this is a horror, and it's one of my favourite films ever. Alien. Alien.
I have a slight problem with the famous scene, but I'll let you do your thing first.
So before Aliens, which was more of an action film, Alien, which people say is a sci-fi film, but it's not. It's a horror film. And the beautiful thing about it is it introduced this new type of horror character who, again, is unstoppable. It can be anywhere at any time. You can't reason with them. You can't stop them. It's not just about that character as well. There's a whole backstory. There's the facehuggers. There's the eggs. They turn up on this planet and there's a random spaceship there that looks like it might have been one of theirs at some point. And again, obviously some of these things aren't revealed until much, much later down the line, and some not until Prometheus and Alien. What was the last one called? Covenant, which I think was a great film. But the facehugger scene, there's droids. I want to say it was Chuck Palahniuk on Joe Rogan put it perfectly. I want to say it was Chuck Palahniuk talking about that. He said it was the first space film that showed the gritty, dark elements of it. Before that, space was you're going to be in shiny suits and it's going to be like you're on a cruise ship and everything's going to be fantastic and it's a bright new future. Whereas Alien showed you, no, you're going to be covered in shit. You're going to be doing manual labor. It's going to be hard. It's just going to be like you're on Earth. You're just in a tin can floating in space. And now suddenly let's add this extra element to the mix that even though it's a bright new future in space, you're still getting fucked by reality. Something's out there to fuck you. In this case,
thought the thing. I think the Thing does that very well as well. That's not in my top. That's a very honourable mention. Yeah. But I think that was the thing. That was a very gritty scene. It didn't look like they were having a good time out there, and then this thing which makes it worse. And I think the Thing, and I will come back on Alien in a second, but I think the ending of that film is one of the most incredible endings that you can see it differently every time you watch it. Is he the Thing? And because he smiles, he goes, is it because he's drinking the oil and now he knows that the other guy's the Thing? Or is he the Thing and he smiles because he's gotten away with it? Or is it the nice happy ending where they both survived it, the thing they killed was the Thing and they both have some water and they're all good to go? Who knows? And I think that's brilliant. But going back to my issue with Alien, I think it was the thing. My dad built up this scene for me. He talked about this guy and he had this thing inside him. He felt really unwell, and all of a sudden the thing blasts out. And I thought, oh my God, I need to see this. So I saw it, and I was hooked on this scene. I was like, my God, this is incredible. This is better than I thought it was going to be. And this thing bursts out, and it felt like such an anticlimax, almost like it felt like a little bit of like a Roadrunner cartoon. Just looks around and then just goes meh, meh, and then meow and scuttles off. I'm like, oh, you'd let the whole scene down by just making this like a Wile E. Coyote runaway thing. Yeah.
The only issue I have with that scene, before I saw Alien, because I didn't see that one too young. Before I saw Alien, I saw Spaceballs. Spaceballs nails that scene perfectly. When he comes out and he puts a top hat on with the cane and starts tap dancing off. So for me, that was I always knew of that scene. But I saw Spaceballs before I saw Alien. So when Alien happened, I'm like waiting for that. I didn't put the hat on this time.
My next one is the only. No, actually, there were two movies that have been made in my lifetime, but this is the only one I would consider a fairly modern movie, which I have down on my list as my number 4. The Strangers with Liv Tyler.
Underrated home invasion film. Incredible.
The scene that encapsulated this for me is like a really good movie. So when they got them all tied up, he goes, why are you doing this to us? And the response was, because you were home. And that, in that same way of sensing a bit of reality, is that not many serial killers and murderers have motive. Right? Jeffrey Dahmer didn't have motive. He didn't hate this person with a vendetta from childhood. They were just people in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Ted Bundy had nothing against these women. John Wayne Gacy had nothing against these people. And the fact that it was like they were the wrong place at the wrong time. they were just this group of people or family that were just that had this bloodlust and fuck. And it was just so creepy. And it was, again, like, lots of behind the scenes. Like, I want to see Hush. I haven't seen Hush. But I think that from the same premise, this woman being deaf and having this person in a home invasion thing.
Yeah.
There's this thing behind. She's on her own. She's, literally a bit distraught after being, like, having to turn down her boyfriend from proposing, and then he goes away. And, like, one of the most startling scenes in that is when, like, he accidentally shoots someone thinking it's him and it ends up being one of their friends, isn't it? And like that sort of stuff, because it's playing on what you would do as a human and what would you know. It reminds me a little bit of, not a great movie, but remember The Mist?
Yeah.
The famous ending, spoiler again, the famous ending to The Mist, where he kills his family because he thinks it's better than them to come into this mist, and then the mist clears, and the military come, and he's just killed his family. And like that is because that is like normality in this world that's a bit strange. Like you could relate to, what would I do in that situation if I killed my kid or killed my friend? What would be going through my head? And you can sort of comprehend how terrible that is, and that was also very, very, very creepy. Yeah,
man. Hush is all right. Like I won't ruin it at all. It's a good film. It's worth watching. But again, it's tough to do that. Suspend disbelief, because if you're invading someone's home and she just so happens to be deaf, that's 5 minutes over and done with. She's dead. Never heard to come. You can't really turn that into a 2 hour.
Well, I suppose if you look at the Night Stalker, like the real life Night Stalker, he played with his victims for a long time.
Yeah.
Not always, but quite a lot. He's a very strange guy. So maybe he was just toying with it. I'm going to go in with that mindset.
I want to say it was called You're Next. There might be a few, because obviously there was a resurgence of home invasion films. I want to say it's called You're Next. Quality film, absolutely quality. Does the home invasion stuff similar to Strangers, very, very good, but then it twists hard and it becomes absolutely incredible and enjoyable, an entirely different type of film. I won't say anything. Check that out. Okay. But if you haven't seen The Strangers, people, watch The Strangers, because that is underrated. That's a great choice.
There was a great video I saw of a home invasion where the CCTV picked this person up he was upstairs like for hours. And he didn't realise the family were in. The family were downstairs all day. Like I think at one point he got to sleep on the sofa, and he came down and came out, and he didn't realise this person invaded their home until when he checked the CCTV cameras the next day. Like, how creepy when you realise that's happening.
See that's a CCTV horror film I'd watch. Fuck Paranormal Activity. I'll just watch that. That's good.
I'll try and find the clip for you and send it to you. But like, that was really good. And again, it seems so parallel to me, like not having that. But I have a friend that's had her home invaded by armed people twice.
Whoa!
In South Africa, hence and held at gunpoint and tied to the radiator, and like it's scary. Like these things actually happen, which it's unbelievable. So, what's your next one?
My next one, then we change culture completely, because once I got bored with American horror, I went down the Asian horror market, which I think some of the best horror films ever made. Ever. Like, obviously, Ring, Grudge, all those originals are incredible. It's really killer, insane. I'm going to go with Audition.
Oh, it's not what I thought you were going to go for. What's the one with the skyscraper? With the zombies in the skyscraper?
Ooh.
Like, super famous, often told you very, very good. I will remember it, and I'll put it in the show notes for people. But so tell me about Audition.
So, have you seen it?
No.
Audition is creepy, slow-burning, intense horror with, not pure, like, no jump scares, anything like that. It's pure, gets into your brain and goes, what if this was happening? Because the original villain that you think of the film, which is pretty much the first half of the film, then, has it turned on them, and different villains come into play, and it then turns into pure, I want to say it's Japanese. I always pronounce him wrong. Takeshi Mick or Takeshi Mike, or Mike Takashi, as he's referenced as in America. His imagination is warped as hell. He does some dark, dark stuff, and this is one where he just lets his torture brain take over and come up with
Art the Clown levels of demented, or are we talking about Human Centipede levels of demented?
So demented, but within the realms of reality as well, which is what makes it creepy as hell. Like, it's not over the top funny gore. You don't have to, like, there's no shitting in each other's mouths, obviously, but it's but it leaves it like it haunts you for a while. That film, there's some scenes that stay with you, which I won't give away because people need to watch Audition. People really need to.
So with mine, we had Halloween and Friday the 13th were a little bit more high octane, let's say, with slash movies. But that is my exception to the rule. The Strangers, very little happens. Home invasion, just building of suspense. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, very grounded. My next one goes into that same realm. And this is the film that I said has a better jump scare than Friday the 13th's final jump scare. Carrie.
Oh.
Carrie is an incredible movie. And it's my mum's favourite horror movie. It's the creepiness to it, the like what religion can do to people, which is very common, very, very common. Yeah. And that jump scare at the end is just I don't mind spoilers in this, but I am not going to spoil that jump scare for people, because if you haven't seen it, even if you know what it is, you won't know when it's coming. And it will get you every single time.
Man, it's a great film. That's a great film. People haven't seen it enough. Not enough people have seen it. Did you ever watch the remake? It wasn't that long ago. I want to say it was like 5 years ago.
No, I don't want to.
It was all right. It's exactly the same film. So I'm like, you didn't need to do this. It's the exact same film.
It didn't have a good young John Travolta in it, and that's definitely not worth seeing.
God, that's a great film. Yeah, that's worth putting in there. That's 100% worth putting in there.
That bumped The Shining off my list.
Yeah, I was so torn with this, right? Because obviously a lot of the best horror films are the classics. So therefore, a lot of my favourite horror films would be the classics. So at very least, I've got a couple of classics in there, but I wanted to do ones that for me were like Audition's not considered a classic horror film. You won't find that in the top 10 lists. Maybe the top 50, but not in the top 10s. My last one, even though I want to put a bonus in, my last one is not going to be in the top 10, not even the top 50, but I think some places have put it in the top 100s before. This is considered a classic, but not a top level classic because it is very, very budget.
Okay, we'll do some honourable mentions at the end for some of these classics.
Of course. And I have a question for you as well at the end, which I'm going to write down. It's called Black Christmas, but I'm talking about one that was made late 70s, early 80s, not something that came out in the 2000s.
Okay.
Black Christmas. Standard horror trope, sorority house, young girls. Killer gets into the loft somehow, and starts whacking them off one by one. But the genius of the whole film is you never see the killer apart from one body part in one scene. And no, it's not his penis. And it's that scene.
Well, you did say he was whacking them all off.
Whacking off every sorority.
Every one of them.
It's another one of those things where you kind of I have to almost guess the killer. And chances are you're not going to guess right. And there's a few jump scares, but it's old horror jump scares, you know. There's a few jump scares in there. There's some really, really creepy scenes. And there's a very, very famous scene from this film that everyone tried to replicate since, but I don't think anyone gets this right. No. There's two scenes in that film. There's only one film that ever gave me nightmares, and it's this film. That's why I said
Could we go into the jump scare? Because let's face it, even if you haven't seen it and don't know it, like me, jump scares are about the timing more than they are about knowing what happened.
Sure. So the only body part you ever see of this guy is his eye.
Yes! I do remember this.
You'll remember it. And this is the first... So this, even though you don't really know anything, you have no backstory, you have no reference to what this guy looks like, even though he could be one of the other characters in the film, which they never really close that for you at the end, which I think is cool. It was the first film, so he keeps ringing them up, giving them prank calls and things like that, and making weird noises and telling them they're all going to die, and there's this weird character called Billy that he keeps talking about. and they're getting the police to investigate these prank calls. And it's the first film that does the calls are coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
And when they reveal that bit, the chills up my back. But that following scene, I won't give that away. That following scene is
interesting. Have you seen The Watcher on Netflix?
I haven't. I've heard about this. I haven't seen this yet.
It's all right. But it's based on a true story. And then, again, they've taken liberties, but they've kept a surprising amount fairly faithful. But that's really creepy because that's like letters, written letters that keep coming to this house, trying to drive them out. And to this day, there wasn't like normally like Netflix dramatization, things like 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. This was 4 or 5 years ago. And they still haven't found out this person. So we still, to this day, this person is still on the loose.
That's how you do it. That's a good one.
Yeah. I tell you, I had an interesting thing recently, as on the topic of these things that are real. Because we know, like, when you see things like things based off like Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy, these either whether you're watching documentaries, dramatizations, or things that have inspired the horror movies. You know some of these things are true or inspired by truth. But you put them in the same sort of category as something that's fictional, right? You don't think it's real. I was chatting to a client the other week, and we got talking about the Jeffrey Dahmer thing because everyone was talking about it. And he mentioned about the Zodiac Killer. Have you heard of the Zodiac Killer case? I go, yeah, of course I have. And he says the camp counselors that were murdered by the Zodiac Killer were his camp counselors. And the car they were murdered in, he has been driven in that car as a kid to camp. Wow. And it happened in his hometown when he was growing up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it actually did happen. And that blows my, and that's where creepiness comes in. You can see that by the movies they're choosing here, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so I think
creepy into it. It's got to be.
I think I'm at my number one, and then we can go into honourable mentions.
Cool.
My number one is 28 Days Later.
Oh, that was going to be my first honourable mention.
It's because it's the best horror movie ever made, best zombie movie ever made, for sure, and the best. I think probably maybe the best horror movie, probably on par with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the zombie bits are scary, but one, look at how people reacted to Ebola, and then look at what the pandemic did to us, like the COVID-19. But it's something that could very much happen. Like maybe not quite like that, but like something could get out that damages humanity. Yeah. The two things I found creepy. Obviously, the zombies are creepy. But what I like about that is that the real horror comes from two things. One, I think, is the way I think the real horror is, and one, they obviously plan to do the real horror, what they plan to tell from this story. What I thought the scary bit is when, like, the bits where it actually supposed to be the light-parted bits, the bits where it's calming down, I actually think it's creepier. Because when they're in the daylight and they go around the shopping centre and they're going over the hills, because they are they're going across the UK to try and find a group of people from a radio signal that may have been done months ago, that may not exist, they may be dead, they may be the only people left in maybe the world. And that, to me, is more scary than any of the actual zombie attacks, because it's that feeling of aloneness that I thought was super scary. And the thing that they tried to get across, which I thought was really good, is that the scariness is not actually the zombies, but humans themselves. And humans can be as terrifying as a zombie if put into these right positions. And it shows how selfish we are when our back's against the wall. Yeah. And I thought that is such an interesting take on a zombie movie where the villains are us more than the zombies. And I thought it was really
something to navigate. Zombies are just something to navigate around. That's just society. That's just the new culture, which is the majority of people. But but it's not just about zombies. That's the problem with the zombie films, and that's why the genre died hard, and that's why what really makes 28 Days Later stand apart as well. Is they sped them up as well. But zombie films then just became about the zombies, nothing else there, and that's why Walking Dead. I got bored end of season 2 and I bailed because there's only so much you can just do zombies. Oh, obviously, I hear great things about later seasons, but I'm never going to go back and watch it.
No,
never.
It's too much.
But that was the good thing about 28 Days. You're right. It's about us as well, how we respond, what we would do in these situations. And when they finally get to the military camp and stuff like that, and a new horror takes on. And
and Christopher Eccleston, not as nice as he was as Doctor Who. And 28 Weeks is nowhere near as good.
Nowhere.
That goes a bit old, like current day modern zombie movie.
Yeah.
But I just love those bits where you realise you're alone. Like I remember the original, the Dawn, not the original, but the Dawn of the Dead, the slightly more modern version of Dawn. They're not the really comical one of the thing, but the slightly more modern one. And they get out and they get on a boat and they drive away to this island, right? And then they're all attacked on the island, and you realise it's not just America. It's gone the world. And you're like, oh my God, that's really creepy. Like, you really are stuck. And that I thought was brilliant. And one of the most interesting takes, and the same thing, I think when zombies are used as almost metaphors for human behaviour, it becomes way more interesting. And this is why Shaun of the Dead, not a horror, total comedy, but Shaun the Dead stands out. Because that scene where he walks, one day he walks to the shops, right? No one's paying attention, everyone's got their head down. Yeah. And the next day, you replicate that scene, but entirely with zombies. And the fact that he can't tell the difference just shows how very little is different between human nature now and slow walking zombies that don't pay attention. And it's played for laughs, but it's like, it's really, really clever.
Really, I really enjoyed that remake of Dawn of the Dead. Obviously, it had some very, very funny bits and some very unrealistic. The baby scene was a bit odd, but I thought the rest of that was really well done. I thought that ending's phenomenal. They're playing some really happy, chirpy music over it, and what the fuck happens? You realise there's actually no hope, and you kind of feel that they made a mistake. There's no hope. There's nothing. And you can do now.
That's scary. Like things now being out of your control, because there's still an element, I think, in a lot of horror movies where there's still an element of control. Like, the whole horror movie trips of this person being stupid is this, right, it's not that hard to escape this guy. We can just run away. We don't go upstairs. Whereas here, it's like, what do you do? Because you're sort of buying time until they kill you rather than actually being able to be safe.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
That's it. And again, it's that whole, that they touched on it as well. Like you're safe in that mall. Like they were locked in. Okay, eventually they would have run out of stuff. Of course they would have. So they would have had to leave at some point. But you're suddenly less safe the more people turn up. So again, it's not just zombies. It's the people.
Yeah, and
matey over the road that they're shooting zombies with was perfectly fine until they decided to do something to try and help him and end up turning the geezer into a zombie.
Going back to 28 Days Later as well, it's not just the fact that humans behave horrendously when their backs against the wall, but the fact that humans caused it. And not only did humans cause it, wake up to the woke fucking brigade, it was people trying to stop animal cruelty that didn't have a solution and got fucked. Oil people spraying paint. When you create paint monsters, they're fucking on you, right? Like, Jesus. But that is also interesting. Like, we are the downfall of our society. And it shows that in so many ways. It's such a clever film.
It's a genius film. Absolutely incredible film.
And have you gone through your 5 now?
That's my 5.
Honourable mention. Who did you have? We'll do this all in one go rather than the back and forth. What movies did you have in your honourable mentions?
So a couple of classics in there, obviously. Mate,
why didn't they make the cut?
So why didn't they make the cut? Because Black Christmas, that's the only one that ever gave me nightmares. Audition is, that's what reignited my love for horror when America wasn't making good horror films. And the other 3, Alien's so different anyway, and it took horror off Earth and into another realm. The other 2 are just complete classics and an education in decent filmmaking.
With your honourable mentions, what are your honourable mentions, and why didn't they make the cut? What kept them out of the top 5?
So my first honourable mention is what I would say is probably one of the best horror films I've seen in the last 20 years, maybe even. It's called It Follows, and it's a ridiculous premise.
I've not watched this because I immediately look at the premise and go, this is crap. Just followed by an old lady around all day. Like, what is going on? Convince me that this movie is worth seeing.
So I thought it would be exactly that. I thought it would be similar to Teeth.
Right? I was just about to say that. I compared it to Teeth.
Yeah. Something that happens when you sleep with someone, and it's going to be ridiculous, and it's going to be more funny than anything else. 90% of the film is like Halloween level thriller tension. You're waiting because it's not just this old woman following you. It can take on the shape of anyone. Someone you've never seen before, someone it takes on this shape and it's walking after you. So you can get away, but it's walking your direction. So eventually at some point, it's going to get to you. but it's this constant tension. And then because it can take on any shape or form, you're looking around at anyone walking towards you at any point going, is it not? It's it's almost like those build-up scenes in Halloween. That's how good I would say it is.
Because it was a disease as well, I suppose it's that still similar thing. The element of control has gone. Because even if I outrun this, I ain't getting rid of you.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do.
So what else made the? Oh, go on.
I won't give it away because the element of can you get away from it? The thing is, I don't want to spoil it. Because I think it's really cool. I think it adds to the terror as well. The remake of Dawn of the Dead was in my list. But again, it's not quite a great horror film because there are some letdown scenes in it as well, such as the baby thing, that sort of stuff. When people told me to watch The Descent because they said it's one of the scariest films I've ever seen, and I'm like, is it going to be though? I thought that was really, really good. I thought that was good, but again, it's more jump scares than anything else for me. But I liked it. There was this different type of horror monster in a different environment as well, with the added intensity of caving's terrifying enough without anything having to be down there. Really, the one time I've done it, and the guy told me the only thing we're going to see down here is potentially an aggressive badger, I wanted out. That's me done. No need for badgers chasing me in a tunnel that I can't stand up in. We're done here, bruv. See you later.
I do think when you set something in like in a cave. I always find because claustrophobia is hard. Like imagine getting trapped in a cave. That's already scary. Let alone finding something there.
And you can't move, and obviously it is pitch black. You're relying on just your torch for your viewing capability. My God, yeah. So the one time I did it, thank God it wasn't too claustrophobic, but it was scary enough. Like you've got to have your wits about you. For me, and then again, one of the scariest films ever is The Ring, but obviously there's only a couple of scenes in that are really, really terrifying to most people if you're not willing to buy into the film, the whole premise of what is actually happening. But I would always go with the originals over the American remakes. The American remakes, I think, make them soft and can't give you that buy-in, so they just put extra jump scares and stupid shit in there. So The Ring didn't make the cut for me because Audition's scarier.
I've got a fair few honorable mentions. Cool. So the first one I have was Don't Look Now.
Ooh.
Have you seen Don't Look Now?
No. I'm hearing amazing things about this.
Do you know the ending? Do you know the twist? Because I feel I can't really talk about it without doing a spoiler because the point is the spoiler, and the reason why it didn't make the list kind of is a spoiler.
Sure. Good.
So good. I don't think it would ruin it for you in the sense of one, I'm surprised how we don't know already, and two, it's borderline comical where you're going to come back and go, God, I want to see this even more because this is mental. So the premise of Don't Look Now is that this girl, these parents, in the American parents, they lose their daughter. She drowns. She's in a red coat and she drowns in this lake, and it's obviously devastating. And they just struggle to get over this. So they move to Venice, of all people, rich bastards. And then, and like any Italian-made movie, lots of sex happens, lots of it, all over the place. Nudity, boobs and hairy vaginas all over the place. Then the guys goes out into Venice. Obviously, Venice is quite a creepy environment as it is. And he keeps seeing this girl in a red coat. And he keeps trying to find her. He's going mad. He thinks he's going mad because he keeps seeing his daughter in Venice. And then at the end, he finally catches up with his daughter. And I think if I remember correctly, it's been so long since I said I can't remember the thing, but I know murder's happening as well. But he's basically chasing this girl, and he sees her at the end of the church aisle, and he puts his hands on her shoulder, thinking it's his daughter, and it turns around, and it's basically an old granny murderous midget. I'm not joking. That's just what it is. And it's unbelievable. It's a bit silly. It doesn't come in because it has a little bit of the Alien effect. Like it's known for the twist, but again, it's a little bit like oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah, I never got around to watching it, which is surprising because of the era it was from.
Yes,
I think. Yeah. But
the next one,
Donald Sutherland's great. Donald Sutherland's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
Amazing actor. He's in some incredible films. What a career that guy's had.
The other reason it didn't make the list is just the bad reports of that director. Like the cast was said he was like a pimp and a hoe, and he was very exploitative. But Stanley Kubrick just made the woman in The Shining very uncomfortable. Deliberately made her fearful on set. Did you know this? She made her scared on set by bullying her, so the interactions were real. I mean, she's a terrible actor, so maybe he needed to. But The Shining is on my honourable mentions list.
Of course.
Very clever classic. I think there's a lot of like the world that he built is one of the best in cinema. How he built the hotel and the intricacies of the carpet and the rooms, and he just built this scene. And then you don't when he starts talking to the barman in The Shining. At no point for a while do I realize, hold on, no one's there. I just assume, okay, there's the barman, and then I stop and I think, hold on, what barman?
Yeah.
You know, it was the closest. It was number 6. It was in the list, and they got bumped for Carrie. And maybe The Simpsons ruined it a bit. It's so good.
You never watch that scene the same again. Ever.
Yeah, it's like the 3 films have been ruined by The Simpsons for that reason. Good films, good Simpsons episodes. That. What's the movie with actor from Taxi Driver? You're talking to me? What's his name? Al Pacino. Is Al Pacino?
De Niro.
Robert De Niro. What's the one Robert De Niro where he goes after the family after being arrested? Cape Fear. Cape Fear.
Yeah.
That's been ruined by The Simpsons because all I think about, because they used the music, Matt Groening bought the license fee to the music, and all I see is Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes and hitting them in the face. That's all I hear.
That episode is genius.
It's one of my favourite episodes.
Randomly, that came to my head the other day. The Sideshow Bob thing, Cape Fear thing.
Best.
Oh my God.
One of the best Simpsons episodes ever.
Yeah,
and the other one ruined by The Simpsons, which is also on my honourable mentions list, is Rear Window. Is Rear Window? Was Rear one of the one where he's looking through the telescope?
Yeah.
That
is
very good.
Yeah.
I think it is the best Hitchcock. Psycho, honourable mentions list, classic, another Ed Gein inspired movie, but just when you actually go and look back at it, it's not that good. It's good because it's the music and it's known, but it's not that good. It's like The Exorcist, which isn't on my honourable mention list. I don't think it's anywhere near the best horror movie ever made, and I think it's another movie that the reputation makes it better than the movie actually is.
Yeah, I think it's overrated,
but I think Psycho is better. Because I do think the guy plays oh my God, what's the name of the character? Norman Bates is an incredible acting performance. Like, he's creepy and he makes it good. The Omen used to be in my top 5, but I now think actually what happened behind the scenes is actually more exciting than what happens in the movie. So I had to take it off for that reason alone. Like the fact that some people died 66 miles from a place called Omen, and she had the same injuries as one of the scenes. Creepy. Really creepy. So, the Omen is in there. Silence of the Lambs, which I sometimes think maybe should have gone.
I wasn't sure whether to put Silence of the Lambs and Seven as thriller rather than horror.
I think Silence of the Lambs is horror. I think Seven is
horror. Yeah.
Because I think Buffalo Bill is scary. Another Ed Gein inspired movie. I think Buffalo Bill is scary. I think the scene with Hannibal Lecter is scary. I think Seven is a cop movie that has a serial killer in it.
Sure. Yeah. I get it.
And I do think with how he says "what's in the box" is a little bit lame and makes me laugh a bit.
Yeah. God.
And then my last two are maybe a bit sillier, but I do think they just about make my honourable mentions list. Is Get Out by Jordan Peele.
Phenomenal. Amazing film.
Very, very clever.
Such a different horror film. Yeah.
Very, very clever. That becomes a bit actiony at the end.
But
I think that's very good. And actually, Scream.
Scream, yeah, of course.
A lot of the things we know for horror movies are done because of that movie, and I think the one thing that puts this on my like honourable mentions list is the ingenious idea to kill off the most highly paid actress in the movie within the first 15 minutes, because that's been done to death now.
Yeah.
But that at the time that was unheard of, because everyone almost relaxed into, well, Drew Barrymore's getting away, and then when it doesn't, then all bets are off on this movie. You have no idea where this is going, and I think the idea of having two killers was interesting, because it's a bit silly. You probably are going to guess it, so you either guess one way or the other as they go. And I guessed not Billy, the other one, the one that played Shaggy in Scooby Doo. Sure, I guessed Shaggy because I thought they'd done enough to rule out. They made him too obvious, which in turn was interesting because he made it too obvious, and it was the person you thought the most all the way through. And I thought it was good in that respect. I thought the first Scream was very good, and it's that holds the test of time, where things like urban legend, like I spoke about earlier, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, definitely doesn't.
No, not at all. It's surprisingly, people forget, like we think of Scream, we think of the horror movie tropes that it gave us in the list of what not to do in a horror, things like that. But there's some brutal slasher scenes in that people forget. Like the Drew Barrymore one is actually quite flipping realistic. Like it's not just a funny over the top gory film. It's pretty hardcore. People forget that bit.
And I think as well, it's like, again, going back to the reality things of it, like, whereas a lot of it's silly, like the woman that tries to get through the cat flap and gets caught in the door, that's stupid. But the Drew Barrymore scene, she's just a woman home on her own and gets a creepy phone call. I don't know why she entertains it, but like, it's, what would you do? Like, I like thinking. I like horror movies that make me think, what would I do in these circumstances? Like, hence 28 Days Later, hence Texas Chainsaw Massacre. 28 Days Later, I really think, what would I do? Texas Chainsaw Massacre, someone think, well, I wouldn't go in the house for a start. They all went in the house. But like, once I'm attached to the chair arms, and what do I do? I don't know. And that's The Strangers, in that same thing. What do I do? So many are in that mold, and I just think that's really interesting. And you can put yourself in the character. So this has been a good, interesting Halloween episode. And I say one last plug. We had masks on the start. Go back and watch the start of it on YouTube if you're doing this with audio. Like and subscribe. Can you tell I want more subscribers on YouTube? Like, I'm doing it, I'm going overboard, mate.
Place to be, and then you can feel like you're involved. That's the beautiful thing about watching the video versions of podcasts. You feel a little bit more like you're involved.
Yeah. Totally agree, mate. Awesome as ever. What again? We're gonna do plugs. We always do plugs, but we plug you every single week. But you are putting more up on the copywriting stuff. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah,
I realise that if I want to keep up with the world, pretty much, that I didn't want to do social media stuff on it, because I like what I'm doing behind the scenes. And cold outreach, as brutal as it is, can be quite effective. But I recognise that I have to, if you want to take business seriously, you've got to have that element to it as well. So at the moment, the social media side, I'm working for fitness. They have Fit Pros, which I hate that word, but it travels on algorithms and coaches, just helping them more often than not with their email marketing. It's easy to get caught on this social media hamster wheel and think, right, likes, follows, comments, cool, and then DM me for a call, without realising not many people want to get on a call, and not many people go on social media to buy. The statistics of consumer spend on social media is like 13%. Email marketing is like 60%. So fitness coaches are being told by business coaches that email marketing is dead and it's old school. It's still way more proven than social media. And people are not sure how to get their email addresses off people. So once you've got their email address, cool. We've now got the opportunity to build up a relationship they're guaranteed to see, because it's going to turn up in their inbox either way. Whereas the algorithm dictates whether your stuff is seen or not. There's no algorithms with those emails. You send a decent email full of value with compelling subject lines that want to get open, your email's going to get read. In which case, job done. That's the whole point of getting their email address off them anyway. Whereas in Instagram, Facebook, TikTok especially, there's no guarantee your stuff's going to get seen because you're relying on someone else. Plus, as we saw recently, I think it's more important than ever, Instagram suspended some people the other day based on a mistake. WhatsApp went down the other week. And how many business coaches out there are telling people to build their business off of Instagram and WhatsApp? These things are never your audience. They're never yours. Whereas an email list, you own. There is the argument, okay, well, the email software could glitch, but if you know what you're doing, and I could show you how, and you back your email list up often, you've always got that document saved in at least 2 other locations. Chances of all those going down on the same day are so minimal. So minimal. So it's helping people do that because we don't have to rely on scammy business coaches anymore that just tell everyone to do the same thing. You can speak to your audience a little bit better, and I think it's quite enjoyable as well. I think it makes you a better communicator, learning how to write as well.
I think that's super interesting. I think that's worth doing an episode on as a topic itself, and it's certainly something I will definitely want to pick your brains on. Certainly with my upcoming launch. But yeah, I mean that's super interesting. Well, I think there's definitely a collaboration here at some point down the line when the course is out. Then like how to get that message up. We'll do something. We'll do like a part of the part 2 together. But sweet man, thank you. This has been good fun, slightly a little bit different, and I'll chat to you next week.
Man, it's a good one.